in the past. Don't have really time for it now, but around Burp Suite, which is a application security tool. And I've also written a book on Ansible, which is used for automation. I mean, not a lot of people use it now, but before Terraform became popular, it was a tool of choice. I've been part of communities. I co-founded Null, the open security community. I was the first Bangalore lead, and I've also part of been an entrepreneurship community called Head Start. That was 2007. Some of you might have been in school, or yeah, really early. uh, I have a few certifications. I don't really do them anymore, but I've had them. I've been a Black Hat trainer. Black Hat is a conference that happens in Vegas once a year. I don't really go there now, but I used to attend it. So this is why you should pay attention to me. I have a lot of experience and I've been doing this for a long time. So I may have a thing or two that you can learn from, right? So coming back to, we want to just go from one misconfig to total compromise. So what the initial breach looks like. The breach will be in 4 steps. Step 1 is, the attacker sees an app and they realize it's a single page app, the kind that is written in Angular, React, or Svelte or Vue or something. And they see that it has certain functionality, especially the functionality on uploading images. And they realize that the images are being directly uploaded to S3 from the client side. There is no server-side call, no XHR, no fetch. So that's interesting, which means that how does S3 have the ability to accept this file? Kind of points to that there may be an IAM key hidden somewhere in the source code. And the source code can look obfuscated, it can look weird, but if you just search for it, search for a search term like AKIA, which is the starting 4 characters of a IAM key users use, they're able to find something. Now that we have this key, I don't know if maybe it's too small, but I'm running a AWS CLI query on S3LS with that key, and I get some answers. I get like 3 buckets, which are open, prod, customer data, something, source code on Lambda, and user picks. It's quite likely that the key was meant to allow write access to the user picks directory, user picks bucket, but the key is badly configured and it has over privileged access. So we have some kind of access of other things. And now we are definitely in the cloud, right? All it took was finding a single page app which had a bad coding practice, right? It's not very difficult to find. It's actually very trivial to do this bit. From the initial breach, now we want to do more, right? We saw there are a bunch of S3 buckets. What can we do with them? We will do this in 3 steps. Step 1 is we will try and see that can we list out all the objects in this interesting bucket called source code and Lambda, right? Obviously, I've named them simply to make it easy for all of you to understand, but there could be more number of files in it, but we can basically go through them. Looks like an interesting bucket. The zip file looks interesting. Why? Because when you are hosting or deploying your serverless application on Lambda, one of the ways you can host your source code is to put it in a S3 bucket. Now, most developers think that because the S3 bucket they are hosting the source code in is not public, they are secure. But as we just saw, we laterally moved. We were able to get access to a different bucket, but because we have read access to this bucket, something interesting is going to happen here. We can basically, sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. We can now just download this using the copy command. S3 is AWS S3 is a very versatile command line tool. We just have to say CP, and just like how we copy from source to destination in our command line terminal, we can just follow the same thing. We're saying S3:/ bucket name / the exact path of the file, and temp / we're just downloading into a temp directory. This bucket is still open. You can actually just go download this right now if your AWS CLI is working. It works with the leaked key, which I showed you in the previous screen. But oh, sorry, that may not work because I deactivated before the talk. But nevertheless, what we have now is a zip file with source code. And what we realize is that inside that zip file, there is a .env, another bad coding practice. But this has like the host name, the username, the password of a database, an RDS, and it has the name of a bucket to which some stuff is being written. And there is a new access key, secret key. Okay. Uh, this is realistic looking mock data. So none of this can be misused, but you get the idea, right? So we started by finding one key, which I call the leaked key. And now we have another key, which I'll call the found key. Okay. At this point, our lateral movement is over. Let's try and figure out what this key can yield for us. When I do a get user with this new key, I find out a username, and just for the the purposes of this presentation, I've called that user overly privileged IAM user. And once I have a username, I can fetch all the policies attached to that username. Right? It's again a list attached user policies command, which requires the username, and I find out that they have admin access. Okay. Now, in the real world, it may take a little longer for you to do all this, but you get the idea. What I have now is the ability, because I'm an IAM admin, I have the ability to use this IAM admin key as is without any problems. It'll get logged very easily in all kinds of CloudTrail logs. Or what I can do is I can get a temporary token, which is valid for almost 36 hours max, and just use that token. The thing is, unless and until specifically allowed and configured, CloudTrail will by default not alert you for this ever, right? So this is one of those things that not many people know about. But once you have this, the attacker can just stay in your account for as long as they want. This is the bit about privilege escalation, right? At this point, it's all game over, right? We went from a leak key, we are at data breach. The things that can go wrong are like data theft, which is terrible, but at least you have your data. In other cases, attackers have been known to like destroy data, and that can be terrible if you don't have a good backup plan. You have just lost all your data. Or in some cases, they use the customer managed encryption key to encrypt data because they're RAM admin. They're able to encrypt data on the in S3 buckets, and that becomes a ransomware problem, right? So just to repeat, what I did was the dominoes fell from one misconfig, which is key leaked, to S3 bucket, source code, DB creds, IAM admin, and total compromise. Okay. I'm actually now done with the presentation bits, and I want to do more questions. I want to, answer your questions or discuss with you like what all can be done here, right? Some questions I think people usually have is like, is this real? Can anyone be this insecure? This never happens. This scenario is from one of the cases that I solved, where for our customer we were able to help them recover. This is how they got hacked. Uh, how can the attackers know there is source code to be stolen? AWS for a very long time used to promote this service called Elastic Beanstalk, which is simply this is before Lambdas became popular, which is again like you source code was hosted on S3, and then it would be deployed as a kind of like a virtual machine, but a managed virtual machine. So it's very common to find source code in S3 buckets. And the next one is a plug for Cloudl. How can we track all of these configurations in our cloud without too much effort and burning through the bank? You can use Cloudl. And yeah, that's where I am. Questions? It'll be nice to see some faces now. It's just weird to look at like letters with mute on it. I mean, do they allow to unmute, right? Or is that
Uh, it's all mute right now. I'll give them
okay?
permission. Uh, if you are okay, I'll give permission to everyone so they can ask.
Whatever is the right way, right? If you think that you can curate the questions, that works. I know there's a place where they can ask questions and it shows up.
Yeah, it's in QA sessions.
Okay.
So anyone wants to be directly wants to ask a question to Akash, just raise hand and I'll allow him to speak, or simply anyone wants to be just push the chat question in QA section, they're happy to do it.
So there are two questions. I think the first one is how Cloudl helps. Cloudl basically tracks all misconfigs when you run a scan. So you could do this manually, or you could do it using Security Hub Inspector, which is simpler to use and much cheaper than those tools. I think the second one is this a real incident example? Yeah, it is a real incident. I've seen this. Helped a customer recover from such an incident, but I've also seen this multiple times in many, many, many products where the front end single page app has uh, access key hidden.
Oh. So I have a question. Like, I have
Yeah,
seen your profile and I have a lot of questions, to be honest.
sure, sure.
Uh, so I have seen your profile. Like, you started Cloudal, you have done Nullcon and all those things. Uh, you like to have any journey experience, like how we started that Null thing?
So when uh, when Null happened, I was actually a freelancer, which meant I had a lot of free time. But my problem was this is 2009. Okay, I don't know. Bunch of you may not realize how the world was in 2009. We did not have smartphones. We did not have YouTube, and learning meant finding something online or go reading, going and reading a book. Doing hands-on meant like setting up everything in your laptop or actually desktop, because it was not easy to just set up virtual machines, or it was not easy to just start up online playground, right? Which meant that as a freelancer, how do I learn? The only way was that if bunch of people with similar interests come together, it's then easy to learn. It's not boring, and you can push yourself. And that's where Null started. And because I was a freelancer, I agreed to be the leader in Bangalore to organize the meets and go from there. So that's how it started.
I also seen like you are a founder at AppSeco,
Yeah.
uh, one more company, and then you were like virtual CISOs. So how's
Virtual CISO
cloud?
was during when I was a consultant. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please carry.
No, I was just saying that AppSeco I started in 2015
Mhm.
with the same thesis that cloud was booming, which meant that the most people would host their products and APIs in the cloud, and we became a specialist company which would test product security of those products which are hosted in the cloud, rather than testing for network and others. Like other companies used to do network testing and all, we were just doing product testing for things which are hosted in public cloud. And Cloudwell came out of that because we realized that a lot of people had configuration issues, which had nothing to do with application. But the developers were unaware, the system admins were unaware, the people setting up things were unaware. They were still treating it like how they set up servers and data centers. And that problem still persists, right? A lot of people
Yeah.
assume that configuration is safe, but in the cloud, it can get bad really quickly.
Nowadays, still people are opening their credential very often. It's still, if you Google also publicly, well, it's still available some of the environment variables as you mentioned here.
You can Google, you can search on the GitHub code search, you can go to like APK downloader websites. So many companies have APKs, and obviously the latest version will not have, which will be in the Play Store. But
Uh-huh.
they would have made a mistake. They just like create a new one. By that time, the older one is archived, but they continue using the same key, right? So it's very trivial to find keys and secrets easily, right? Long-lived secrets are not recommended by AWS at all, but that it's so easy to use. It's so easy to get started with that most people just do that.
Yep.
There's a
There
question about elemental media services. I don't really know what that is. I would really appreciate if you can put your name, because then I can ask you,
are
or if you
anonymous.
can like just unmute and ask what is the can you tell me a little more what is elemental media?
I heard for the first time. Okay, what is this?
So
There is
Palash,
one more question, Palash Karmare. So can
yeah,
you share?
Palash is asking about when the key is not client side. So we've seen this, and it's not very complicated. But if people have hosted a app in a EC2, and the EC2 is using IMDS version 1, the metadata service, and the application is vulnerable to something called server side request forgery, then we can extract the access key, secret key, and token. And depending on what the privilege of that access key, secret key is, the rest of the steps will remain the same. It's just how we will discover the initial key is it changes, but the rest of the stuff remains the same. So someone's asked, how can we learn this? It's too broad. I don't really know what you are talking about. Oh, okay. There's one more question. If an external attacker gains access, can he pry open the entire system, or is there multiple levels of security present? It totally depends on how you set it up. So in the cloud, like AWS, there is a concept of shared security responsibility model, where AWS says that I will make sure that the hardware present on which you are running your EC2, the disk present where your S3 is, that all is secure. But any access on top of that which you provision, you are responsible for, right? So you could do a completely hardened AWS configuration, but most people don't use their cloud by planning on day one, right? They start using the cloud, and as the requirement comes, things change. So sometimes these configurations remain. So the short answer is there are multiple levels of security present. The long answer is they are present. You need to make sure you enable them. But every additional level of security you enable makes development, backups, operations on them more difficult. Does that answer your question, Vibhav?
Saying yes, I guess. By sending reaction. Okay.
Okay.
There is one more, Mohammed Salman. So it's like I studying ISC 2 and Security Plus and going for SOE job. Is my roadmap good?
I'll be honest, I don't really have an idea about that. I do feel that all of this, a lot of the jobs are going to get impacted with how AI is going to get used.
Hmm.
So it's worth talking to people who are already doing this kind of job, who have that certification, and check with them what does the outlook look like, right? Too much is changing. So I honestly don't have an idea that if you have IC2 and Security Plus and a SOC job. Uh, if it's a government type of job, a lot of governments are now setting up SOC. Maybe it's great, but I honestly don't know if it's a good roadmap. Right? It used to be pre-COVID, pre-AI. It used to be this was a very good place, but I really don't know now. Sorry for the non-answer. If I set up a good CSPM and harden all the configurations, am I still at risk? If your cloud is not changing at all and your access is in place, then you're fine, right? The challenges usually come when access is changed because new things have to be set up, or that happens. But sometimes, as per the shared security responsibility model, for example, when Log4j happened, AWS themselves are not well prepared. They had bunch of services which were vulnerable to Log4j, and there was nothing that customers could do anything about it. But by and large, if you do a good setup, harden the configurations, you should be good. Cool. I think I answered. I got a thumbs up. I really don't know what is Elemental Media Service in AWS. I can figure it out, and maybe if you can reach out to me on email or LinkedIn, I'll be able to respond in a day or two. I don't know what this is.
That is something related to telecasting media live things.
See, it's all the same, right? In the end, cloud is basically three things: compute, storage, and network,
Hmm.
right? All access control is around compute, storage, and network. So, whatever it is, this particular service is, like, for example, SageMaker is an AI service where basically it's virtual machine with S3 bundled, right? So, the access control is important. So, I'm sure the answer is similar for this, but I don't know of this specific service. There are over 600 services in AWS. So, It's a bit of a thing.
Okay. There is. How do you scan bad configuration? Is it some agent you run? Do you need AWS account read only access for the same?
It's AWS read-only access. It's API based.
Mm.
You answered your question, Amardeep. So,
Just like
how do you
how?
approach securing multi-cloud? So there are two parts to it, right? There is a technical control. Each cloud will have more or less some set of technical controls that you have to put in place, like configuration and stuff. But the second is access control and governance. Who do you give access to? Do all your developers get IAM admin access, or they get granted access just in time only for certain things, and then the access is revoked, right? So whether you talk about single cloud or AWS with multiple accounts, or multi-cloud, which is like different providers and working together, this governance has to be in place, right? It's not really it's not about the technical controls. You could have the most secure thing, but if someone has the same password across two different cloud providers and the password is leaked, it's a problem, right? Just like IAM access keys, if in Google you keep using service accounts which are broadly privileged, that's a challenge, right? In Azure, you can have service accounts and you can do network level security, but if that network level security, that server is breached, there can be problems. So how do you approach it? It's a complicated problem, but fundamentally there has to be some governance. A good start is the NIST 853 document. It talks about how do you like maintain secure systems across network, and I recommend that you read that. 853 has many versions. You will have to like find the latest version, and it'll give you the structure and the framework. Another way to think about it from a policy point of view is the NIST cybersecurity framework, right? Which covers all these things, but from a governance point of view. Then technical controls, which are covered in like 853, get covered under that, right? So it's up to you. Are you a technical person? You will go technical first and then look at policy and governance, or you will bring in from a governance policy point of view and then look at technical controls. How do you get better at threat modeling applications? Uh, like with everything else in life, you start by practicing a lot of threat modeling. You can use ChatGPT, Claude, these LLMs. They are really good at giving you a list of threats, potential threats. But fundamentally, you have to simplify the model in your head. No matter what people say, there are only three things to protect: the network and the cloud configuration, the platform. The second is the application itself and the access control. Your application needs to be secure so that nobody can do something to the underlying network or the cloud without your knowing, right? With the right authentication authorization. The same thing applies to your cloud infra, which brings to how do you secure and how do you make sure your cloud infra is not impacted is by making sure your IAM access control is in good place, right? That's these are the three things you have to focus on, whether you're threat modeling applications or applications that are hosted in the cloud.
I think he can make a lot of AWS architect, and then he start applying different technique like stride, dread, and all those things, and making more practice. And I think he will get
So
better.
unfortunately, both stride and dread are like obsolete now.
Oh, yeah.
A better way to better mapping for threat modeling now is the MITRE attack framework,
Mm.
which talks about from initial breach, lateral movement, and all. Because stride and dread were written for a world where not everything was networked, not
Mm.
everything was a service outside of your control, right? It gets too much in depth, and then in cloud that you kind of miss that, right? But yeah, overall the answer, what you're saying makes sense. It's just that it's not very practical in modern age. Can AWS Shield block DDoS attacks immediately? Ideally, it can, but it depends on what layer the DDoS is happening. And if it's, I mean, there's like, it should be able to, but I would pass and say that you need to ask AWS support. Shield has its own problems. In the end, uh, it's just a huge packet filter. It's looking at things and trying to figure out what to allow, what not to allow. So with all DDoS mitigation uh, at network level or at application level. Some things can be done and done immediately. Some things require some uh, prep. Can you tell the key things to note when designing a data security model where multiple people have access to the data? Uh, I think it's very open-ended, but the key thing is that you need to have a good model of what the access will be, what will it be used for. So, like the user, the entity, and human or machine against the resource and what kind of access, right? So it's almost like a 3D matrix that you can build, and usually the standard things for securely building things or secure architecture apply here, which is like default fail and trust but verify kind of things. But fundamentally you have to just answer who's allowed what, when, and what is the extent of the allow, are you allowing read access, write access, or can it get more granular? I apologize, I can't really give you a better answer because it's fairly open ended. But the AWS documentation as part of its cloud adoption model is a good read in for this specific case. You can read the security pillar. It'll give you a lot more information. Hi, Ali. Good afternoon. Learning AWS in DevOps. So can you give some suggestions for us like that people, those are really the suggestions do you want are like, I'm not sure I follow Ali. Like suggestions from what you should learn point of view? I'll answer from there, right? I'm not really sure what you're looking for. AWS has this amazing thing called well-architected labs. They're absolutely free labs. So you just need an AWS account and you can follow tutorials on to make secure, performant, scalable, architecture for AWS, right? So the well-architected labs has like really good documentation and really good follow-up things. Maybe someone can like, maybe I'll try and see if I can well-architected labs. I actually recommend this to everyone. I'm pasting this in chat. If you are in AWS and whether it's security, whether it's operations, I highly recommend you do this over time, like when you have some free time, right? Uh, Hopefully this will help you.
Does this need any credit or something like? No.
You will need to spend some money, but the labs will tell you,
Okay.
right? They will tell you exactly how much it will cost. It's not a lot, or you can skip those parts, right? But generally, bunch of things are absolutely free to try. Yeah. I'm running a side project, a SaaS, completely serverless. I don't have any customers. I'm not making a penny from it. What are cheap options to secure the SaaS from DDoS? My question actually would be to like, why do you worry about DDoS right now when you don't have customers and you're not paying any penny? If it's a question of the bots are reaching your endpoints, then maybe you want to put some kind of, some kind of an auth or a pre-shared key and just not answer the queries which are missing the header, right? You can just do that at a load balancer level and dump them, not even log them. But why would you worry about DDoS?
There is one from Shubham Chaube. So does doing cloud related certification help in career? I recently did the AWS SAA, learned a lot and got comfortable with CLI and console. Target is to go for more into cloud security later on, but still feel like I'm lacking so much. Want to more projects and learn IIC.
So Shubham, I'm sure if you just go to ChatGPT and say that I want 10 projects to learn infrastructure as code in Terraform or Pulumi, it'll give you nice ideas. But I have a different take on learning, right? Unfortunately, a lot of us, especially in the Indian context, our schooling in college is such that we just learn, right? Nobody explains to us what the higher purpose is. But learning without purpose is actually not very useful. So my recommendation is that go find a job which needs IAC. You'll get to work as in the DevOps and use your certification and your knowledge and solve it there, right? Because it's not about just setting up things. what you have to do is that the real learning is when you set up things and you set it up really securely, but nobody can use it. It's pointless. It's unusable, right? Or you set up with security. The because of the security control, it becomes so expensive as it scales that that is also pointless. So when you do this in a real world scenario, you learn to balance, you learn to accept risks, you learn to like how do you optimize. And sometimes the answers are not what AWS is telling you, because in the end AWS is a for profit company and they make $25 billion every 3 months from AWS, right? So it's in it for them to just ask you to start everything. But here is that's what I would recommend. But the short answer is, if you're just looking for more projects, just ask ChatGPT to give you 10 projects, right? That's all the prompt you need. What steps should organizations take to prepare for and respond to security incidents in the cloud? Can we have a kill switch in the cloud environment? Absolutely, you can. Uh, you can, you can just uh, have a Lambda or a serverless which you call or invoke, which basically will revoke all access, right? Or stop, or maybe take away all security groups or knackles. You can do all that. They AWS also has a concept of breaking glass, which is more structured in terms of, I won't call it a kill switch, but like for incident response, like when do you really, like how when there's a fire situation and there's a fire alarm, you break the glass to switch on the alarm. It's something like that. You could look at that. But the AWS documentation on incident response is fabulous, right? Well architected labs is based on the cloud adoption model by AWS. This is all documentation. There are 5 pillars, and I highly recommend that you read those. Folks, I think I'll take two more questions. I have a hard stop at 5:45.
Okay. I think we'll take this last one. This we picked
Sorry.
up. We picked up this question, right? Tarang Leela, there is in chat. Uh, So I have passed 12th and I am content creator. I also have 30,000 followers. I'm working on my own startup and self-educated in cloud security. But I should not say this, but my startup did not work. So will I get a job without any degree? Please tell me honestly.
Tarak, I honestly don't know. If you are based in India, there is opportunity. Not everyone will give you a job, but I'm sure there are places that will. I'm myself not an engineer, right? So I have a BSc degree. It didn't really stop me from having a career in cybersecurity. People without engineering degrees, require to do a lot of self study. So I'm sure there is job for you. You are familiar with online. You have followers. I'm absolutely sure if you ask them, they will be able to offer you leads on where the jobs are. But I can't tell you if you'll get a job without a degree. If the job involves travel to the US, you will not get that job, right? Because they'll not ever give you a visa.
I think we should try and experience it instead of looking for, uh, thinking for that. Okay. Okay. This was last question. We'll leave it.
Cool. I've given my coordinates. I'm happy to get on email. I respond to emails fairly quickly. Not so much X or Twitter DMs. I check it once in a while. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, not on weekends, but happy to answer more questions or point you folks to the right resource. And yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity.
I think Akash is very much active on LinkedIn because it's so fast in replying, even in emails. That's nice. So we'll say end the session. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope the session on this AWS Domino effect found very insightful and helpful. A huge thank you to our speaker Akash Mahajan for sharing his expertise and walking us through a small deck, valuable content. So we appreciate all of you for taking the time to attend and for your active participation for this QA. Event like this are all about building knowledge and community. So we really want to make everyone involvement, and it's really make worthwhile. So before we wrap up, I like to remind everyone that we have already scheduled our next event on 20th Jan, uh, first January meetup. The speaker is from Turkey. She's a AWS security hero, and she's also uh, IoT and AWS architect solution. So I think that will also bring very valuable. So till time, stay connected. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. So until next time, stay connected and have a great evening and happy weekend.
Bye. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
okay, sir. Bye bye.